Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to Untangle. Today, I am super stoked because this interview is going to be a little different than what you've seen me do before. Partially because I am a fan, so I'm totally geeking out right now. But I have Joy, who is a UX designer, and we'll get into all the things, full stack everything. She does everything. But she is also the business owner of a company called Clause and Code, and we'll also show you what that is. If you've been following me for a while, you know I've been telling you as a UXer, take your skill and pivot. So that's what we will cover today with Joy. But first, let me say welcome. Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
joining us today.
Beautiful intro. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's start with my favorite question. Joy, can you share with us how did you get into UX and what did they call it when you got started?
That's a funny story. So I built a few thousand WordPress sites in my day, and WordPress I loved. It was not only pretty easy to figure out PHP and CSS and MySQL, but I was able to hack any theme to make it what I want it to be and bend it to my will. I didn't realize that I was a dev at all or a web developer. I kind of called myself a web designer. And it wasn't until maybe about 10 years into my craft that I built a really large site for a realtors association. And I had to learn a brand new stack. So I had been using PHP, CSS. I had to learn .NET Nuke to build the site. Anyway, I built the site. I won an award for that. And then some of the imposter syndrome that I had around like being a web designer, or am I a dev, am I a designer, that kind of melted away. And then I kind of embraced like, okay, I'm a marketing and web development director, right? Like every single title that I had somehow merged strategy with creative with dev. That ended up morphing into design engineer, started calling myself that for a while, and literally like working in SaaS, you're building apps, working with smaller businesses, you're building websites, but it's the same skill set, right? You're figuring out a way to use code to communicate a journey, to take a user on a journey. So web designer, web developer, design engineer, I was mentoring for a while. And in one of my mentor sessions, one of my mentees started teasing me. He's like, WordPress designer, WordPress developer. He's like, Google user experience consultant. He said it very, very funny. You know, he's teasing me. And I Google it. And he's like, do you see how much they make an hour? You're doing all of those things already. And you've been doing those things. And that's why your websites are successful and businesses are scaling. He's like, that's where you need to move. And he basically dared me to apply to 100 jobs before he would help me with my portfolio. He was a senior user experience researcher. He had been in it for about 2 or 3 years. He'd written a book on UXR, and I wanted to apply to 100 jobs, came back to him, and we tweaked my resume a little more. And then he's like, do another 100. And I did another 100 and got a position as a senior user experience designer at a SaaS. So that's how I got the actual user experience title. And I'm going to be honest with you. I think it's the one that I like the most. I've gone from senior, now I'm like in the lead position. I think at a smaller company, I probably would just be a CDO, a chief design officer. But I think when you hear user experience design, it clearly communicates that I am creating this beautiful journey, mapping this experience from end to end, and you can grasp it. The fact that I know code, that's a bonus. You know, the fact that I've built a couple thousand sites, that's a bonus. But, interesting journey, many titles, and they change, like product designer, right? At Meta, they call me a generalist. Like, what?
That's one of the things that's very interesting is like the evolution of titles. And then I was having a conversation last week at a conference, and it was one of the things that has made this difficult for some people to learn is because there are so many different titles and we're using so many different buzzwords and all that those good things. So I don't usually typically ask this question, but I'm going to ask you: how do you explain to your friends and family what you do as
I
a
design
UX?
software. Super easy. I design
That's
software.
it.
It's the
Okay.
easiest. And we should be called software designers because web apps are software. mobile apps or right apps or software. I think now as we're moving into voice interfaces, I think there needs to be some iterations to, if you're building for AI and building for like agentic AI, getting a title for that. But if I'm talking to a 4-year-old, I say I design software, I design apps. Do you have an app? Do you have a tablet? I design those. And I think even if they don't understand the technical, work and exercise that you have to do behind that, they understand what the finished product is. And I think that's what's important.
So another thing that I love about you is this constant forward momentum. So where do you go for knowledge? Where do you go for information? How are you constantly upskilling yourself?
I read actual books. Yeah, there are maybe 10 here. There's 10 by the bed. I have a pretty big library. And it's interesting, when I'm interviewing, they hate this answer. I get, where do you get inspiration? And I go, museums, street art, libraries, Barnes and Noble, books. That's where I get inspiration from, the tactile world. Can I build mood boards in Pinterest? Sure. Do I have crazy bookmarks in Instagram and Twitter of like things that inspire me? Sure. But where do I actually find like my well of inspiration and drive? Comes from reading books. Just think it's a really good, peaceful, introspective way to, synthesize thoughts and focus and be away from the screen a little bit.
I love that. So, in your journey as a UXer, what has been some of the most difficult things for you to learn, or things that you wish you learned sooner?
I had a real major issue with imposter syndrome for the first 6 months, I would say, when I got that senior UX position. It's because my target market was attorneys, which is, it's a conservative group, but I felt like there were a lot of eyes on the work that I was doing, and I just was worried about criticism and getting it right. And I went back to that same mentor, and every time that I would complain, I remember at some point he figured out how to set me straight. And he said, everybody learns on the job, Joy. Everybody learns on every job. Whatever it is, you can figure it out, and you will figure it out. So I think that is, there isn't a specific thing. I think when I first embraced Figma, it was like, not only do I have to go to config to learn about components, but I've got to teach my juniors how to maintain and build this design system. And then we've got a group of the devs who are used to using Adobe XD, and now I have to train them and onboard them, right? And give them the ability to scale. So those are the things that are the scariest. It's not just like pulling into my skill set is easy. When I've got to know it enough to train someone, and then know it enough to do like cross-functional collaboration and then put it out, because everything we do is public facing. And so just that kind of like anxiety was a challenge for me in the first couple months. That has since dissipated. And I think it was those words that my mentor said to me. He said, everybody learns on the job. You'll learn on the job.
Talk to me about, so now that you've had that advice and you've reflected, I take you for someone who reflects. Where did the imposter syndrome come from?
Being a brown girl in tech, not having a community, being the only one of my kind, working in a silo. There's that. The changing in titles would be another big contributor to that, because the titles, you'll be in a role, and the title for your role will change while you're in a role. So you'll meet people that are doing the thing that you're doing that have a completely different title that kind of like changes your perspective on it. And I think as I was like finding my momentum with UX, and then the product design title started to become what the major software companies were using for that role, it was a challenge. So I think like the title, and that's just tech. In tech, titles change a lot. That's just part of the program. But I think that creates a little anxiety, because every time you're shifting careers, you're like, what am I looking for a job in? The thing that I thought I was doing 5 years ago, and where is this title going to be 5 years from now? So that was a lot of it. I was able to really build community on Twitter Spaces. Like, it was, I think, prior to Elon purchasing X, it was such a beautiful environment of developers and designers coming together. And that's where I first started to meet people like me, people that were doing the work that I was doing, and we were hashing out things together. And yeah, I think the imposter syndrome has like since melted away. I mean, I just move into any meeting with confidence. I'm just ready to tackle. And also just, I think at this point, it's like, it's okay to not know things. You know, I don't pretend to know everything. And if I don't know, I ask for help, you know, I'll research it, or I'll, you know, watch some YouTube videos until figure it out.
That's what I was hoping you were going to get to, right? A lot of people, so a couple weeks ago, we did a talk on imposter syndrome and what that means. It just means you don't know yet, right? Yet. Keyword being
Yeah.
yet, because you're probably trying something new. And I don't know where we learned it, but it was one of the first things we started to decouple when we started talking about like design thinking. But like, you don't have to know. That's that's the cool part, right? We're usually in spaces that we're not familiar with. So it's not the I don't know, it's I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out, right? I'll go the extra mile. So I love that. Okay, so then you talked about my next favorite word, networking. What does networking look like for Joy?
It's new too, because like I said, I've always been the only one like me, you know, the only one like me in my town, the only one like me at the company, the only one like me in my family, the only one like me in my friend group. I've always been the only one. I'm the one that people go to when they have questions that are around making a website work, right? Making an app work. I took that time, and that was a lot of that had to do with COVID. You know, Twitter Spaces blew up at the right time. I ended up meeting and creating a community of friends that were working at Twitter at the time, and they brought me into the beta group for Twitter Spaces. Had that not happened, I never would have met Ranjan, that's my mentor. I never would have met a lot of women of color that were moving into project management and UX and UXR. Not really a lot of creative designers, but it was like taking our brain power and putting it into mapping out these journeys and making them more effective. That's when I met that group. And since then, it's been tough. I was kind of bounced around between a couple cities. I was in Brooklyn, now I'm down in Florida. So it's been tougher to kind of build community down here. But I have made such beautiful relationships from that time in Twitter Spaces that I still lean on those folks whenever I hit a roadblock.
What, if any, skills or what advice would you have for those people? Because we always meet them like, I don't like to network, I don't like people, I'm shy. What advice are we giving those folks?
Um, you may not like it too much.
I'm anxious to hear it because I feel like you might be one of those folks.
I consider myself very shy, but then people meet me and they go, "You're not shy at all." I didn't realize ambivert was a thing until right before I went to config. Well, when you check into config, you grab a little tag that says whether you're introvert, extrovert, or ambivert. And I remember kind of getting to the table and having this, I'm like, no, I'm an ambivert, right? I'm owning it now. My best work has come from solitude. It's come from chasing my flow states and following, like, if I have a challenge and following the solution to the end without any interruptions or distractions. That means I'm not texting my homies. That means I'm not looking at social media. Right? I'm not watching TV. I might not even be listening to music. And that solitude has been my superpower. And so the introvert part of me says, it's okay if you don't network. Just make sure that you do focus on iterating on your craft. Make sure that when you're not interacting with the community, make sure that you're reading, make sure that you're learning. Now that you're watching podcasts on the subject that you love, right? Get the algorithm to start showing you more of the information that you need. And it's okay to kind of passively follow experts, right? But there will become points in your career, like COVID, where in order for me to realize that I was not just a full stack dev and I, wasn't just a WordPress designer, I needed that community to jump into that pivot. And like I literally doubled, my salary. I think one year I brought in $250,000 from just realizing that those skills were transferable into a different role. And so, in the same token, it is important to find community, right? But I think it really depends on your personality, and some people have to practice it. So it's not something I try to bully people into. If you like to work quietly, that's okay. Doing software is definitely the work for that.
So I want you, because I am also an ambivert, but I want you to share with my audience what an ambivert is.
An ambivert means that if you absolutely have to, you can speak to a conference of 10,000 people, but you would prefer to just curl up in the couch under a blanket and read,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You have to find that balance, right?
Yes.
I would say the ambivert is who I'm paid to be, right? That personality came out of waiting tables. And waiting tables, I can't be an introvert. I don't make the same kind of money. But I'm on when I'm on, and then I'm off when I'm off. So I love that. Thank you for sharing. Because you gave me introvert vibes,
so
especially knowing what I know about how you work.
Yeah, oh my
I
gosh.
feel like you'd be able to help them with that. Okay. All right. So now you also touched on thinking about the future. So what in your mind is the future of UX? And you can break it down because I know you do all the things. So what is the future of UX to you?
You're not gonna like this one either. It's embracing AI. It's building for a no UI internet. So it is designing experiences that might just be through meta glasses. It's designing experiences that may be driven by augmented reality. It's designing experiences that may be voice only. I think the immediate shift is voice, right? When I'm driving, like I just took a long 50-minute drive, as I was working through a problem that I'm trying to solve with Shopify and Liquid, that conversation happened with me and Claude by talking, right? And so sometimes I have to say, okay, oh, that's perfect, make it an artifact. But ultimately, voice is the easiest way for us to communicate. And now that AI is doing a really great job of synthesizing what we're saying and helping us scale our ideas, then we need to learn how to design for those interfaces. And that might be conversational, right? That might be the animation that happens when you click on the little microphone button, right? And so we've got to be able to adapt to where the humans are going and just figure out a way to improve those experiences.
So the first question that people are going to ask you is how do you learn to design for something like voice?
That's a really good question.
Where do I need to be so that I'm in a position to start to designing for this? I still think the UI will in some instances the UI will just change, right? There's going to, for some of these things, there's always going to be something. But how do they get prepared for that? May not be a screen. That may be a win.
There's a lot less of it. If you are creative, you need to focus on micro animation and motion, period, hands down, end of story. You cannot be competitive in the market in 2030 without being comfortable with understanding some of the basics of, easing and linear and the way that motion happens on the screen. Okay. So whether you're going to be working for a dinosaur that has a relatively archaic UI and you're making it more modern, or you're working for a voice interface or an AI company, there's so many different agents that are being built every day. And a lot of companies are now trying to figure out a way how to bring an agent into their customer journey. And so you've got to be comfortable with micro animations. That is what's going to give the user delight. Even if you don't know how to tween and animate the frames, that's okay. Understanding those concepts so that if you need to bring a motion designer into your team, you understand the limitations and constraints of that work. That would be my biggest thing. Other than that, go on YouTube and search for it. Just go on YouTube and search for it. If I wanted to, if I let's say that I was being pulled into a company and I knew in their roadmap they were going to have a agentic voice AI launching in a year, I would absolutely be Googling and figuring that out. I'll tell you quickly about a passion project too. So I was between gigs, and this was prior to Claude and ChatGPT having voice at all. So there was no audio, it was just type. Anthropic was a little company. I love Anthropic, so I talk about Claude a lot. But I found out on Twitter about this company called Talktastic. And Talktastic had a little Mac app that lived in your little bar, your toolbar, and you could use a shortcut key and it would record your voice into whatever app you were using. As they iterated on Talktastic, they ended up putting Claude inside of Talktastic. So you could communicate to Talktastic and Talktastic would hear what you said and rewrite what you communicated so it would be clearer, more poignant, right? And there was a couple different writing styles, and then it would paste it into the interface. So imagine if you're doing really long form emails or communications, being able to just spit into an audio interface and it immediately drop into that box something that sounds really well authored is a superpower. I fell in love with this app. Like I said, I love interfacing with voice. That's just my thing. So I start following the company and, tweeting to the CEO. And then I'm like, why don't y'all have an iOS app? Like, what is going on with that? So I built it. I opened up Figma. I ran a search for how to animate audio waves. Watched 2 or 3 videos, built the actual animations in Figma, played the prototype, grabbed an iPhone, put it in there, built the journey, right? It took maybe 2 days, right? Maybe it took 5 hours of effort to just jerry-rig this thing. I posted on Twitter and the CEO slides in my DMs. He's like, can I meet you tomorrow? Even though there's a lot of constraints in iOS when it comes to audio and sending. If now it's changed a bit, but at that point I wanted Talktastic to live inside of iMessages. So I wanted you to be able to click the little button in the next to your iMessage and just activate that voice instead of Siri and have this, right? I had this grandiose idea, but I just say it to say, you think about the finish line, you don't have to map the whole journey, right? You tinker around, you present your idea enough, and then the people that have that skill set, you all get together and you figure it out, So that's a really, as we're talking about audio, something as simple as like how to animate sound waves was my search. And I'm like, oh, let's go, let's go.
We will move
Play
on.
Prototype.
No. Wait. Let me ask one more question.
Okay.
So people ask me all the time. So I don't know if I told you, I have a 16-year-old son.
You didn't.
So, yes. So all of our life is about what is he going to go do, right? And everybody's like, are you going to tell him to go into UX? No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Will it exist?
These are the questions. So same question to you. What would you tell somebody who is interested in UX who hasn't started yet? Would you recommend this space?
I did the Great American Teach-In 2 months ago, and I sat in a room of kindergartners, and I had grabbed kind of like a Nike site prototype, and each of those frames existed in Figma, and I went and sat in front of the kids and explain to them the thing that I do, right? And the easiest way was like, oh, I grab this picture of a shoe from the internet and I move it here. And then like, oh, look, it's a website and you can pick the cut, right? And like in that, there was this Q&A. And so most of the questions came from the teachers, which is funny because they're just like, how do you get this? How do you get into this? And how much money do you guys, right? But the kids had simpler questions, which were about like tablets and interfaces. And my answer to them is art is as important as math. So reading is important, writing is important, math is important, but creativity is too. And I think it's important to feed both. I've met a lot of creative kids and I've met a lot of technical kids. And I think that in order to be a beast 10 years from now, you've got to be able to kind of speak both languages. There will always be work in engineering. There will never not be something that needs to be coded or programmed or monitored or edited, that will never stop. No matter how powerful the agents are at helping us build capacity. And so that's what I would tell a 16-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old. Feed both buckets. If you decide that you want to go into software, cool. You're not going to be a great dev if you don't understand what the designer's life is. Same for the designers. Like, it's great that you build beautiful, complex UIs with 20 breakpoints. Awesome. If you can't hand that off to a dev and you don't understand how it's going to be implemented, how long it's going to take, right? Those things. And a lot of that is changing, right, with our tools. But still, those fundamental learnings of, being able to bridge creative and code, I think is important. That's the only way that you stand out on top of all the other engineers, on top of all the other artists, is when you can speak both languages.
I love that. Yeah, my baby is not the creative type. He's the engineer type, but he's fighting me on that piece. All right. So now, the part that I love the absolute most is we're going to get into how I came to learn about joy.
I want to hear this story too.
So yeah, I don't think I told you.
No,
so
you
how
didn't.
I learned about joy is I have a bestie who I don't know how long ago this was, fell in love with keyboards, right? I don't know what y'all call these, the mechanical keyboards. Fell in love with keyboards.
They're called mechanical keyboards. On TikTok, they call them keybs. I just found out a couple weeks ago. But yeah, They're mechanical keyboards.
Mechanical keyboards. So she fell in love with mechanical keyboards. And this is like become a thing, right? So
it's an obsession.
I'm not going to tag her because I didn't ask permission to do that. So I'm not going to do that. But if she wants to, we'll definitely drop her in. Anyway, so now she has she's like this big, huge personality on TikTok around these keyboards. And she's also a UXer. And somehow she came across you, and I'm going to show the people what you do. But she came across you, and then she geeked out. She's like, and she's also a UXer. And I was like, oh, let's get into it. So what I have come to learn is not only are you a UX everything, but you are also a business owner.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even know if that's on purpose. I would love to hear that story. But can you tell my audience about Clause and Code?
I can. So I got to have a serious conversation about this yesterday. So first I'm going to kind of talk about the name. Someone asked me, like, what does Clause and Code mean? It's a bit of a juxtaposition of my personality. So Clause represents hunting and capturing and eating, right? Like, you think of claws in nature, you think of a lioness, right? You think of a tiger, you think of a bear, right? You think of an animal that's out there hunting for whatever it is. And I think, yes, there's a connection to design and art and culture and nails, and how nail design and nail art is its own community. There's that, right? I happen to have long nails. I've had long fingers my whole life. It's just part of who I am. But I think the claw part is really about that. It's about that ferocity, about that hunger, about going out to eat, right? The means to that end is code, right? The means to that end is, how do I get, this idea out? There's code behind that, whether I wrote it or not, right? And so I just so happen to be a designer and an engineer, and I just so happen to kind of live at the intersection of those things. But ultimately, I think what kind of speaks to your homie and a lot of other people when they see the brand is they instantly understand that. They understand that there's kind of like a fire in my belly, and I want to kind of bring those two worlds together. So Clause and Code was a random name I put on an Instagram live just because you have to name your IG live. It wasn't something I thought about before. I hadn't written it. I got to name this IG live. Let me name it. And I named the IG live, and I went live, and you didn't even see my body. So my camera was face down, showing my desk. So you just saw me typing, At one point, I kind of bent my screen so you can kind of see that I was coding. I think I was working on a fashion campaign for a Shopify site, writing Liquid and looking through her pictures, right? And within about 20, like I used to just work and go live and there would be 3 people in there, be a couple of my homies. Not a big deal, right? We were just sitting there and talk. But for some reason, when I named that live clause and code, it attracted dozens of people. And they all kept saying, oh my God, that's you, right? Like that concept is you. And then a friend of mine said, you better buy that URL, right? And that was a year ago. Since then, I dropped a little podcast called Clause and Code, and I was already building keyboards. I think I might have been on my 4th or 5th board, and I was not building boards for the brand. I was building boards because I was working with a team, and I really hated they had PCs there, no shade. But all the tech was really kind of blah. And I had long nails. So, I had a couple of really bad boards that looked pretty. And then eventually I realized the more I understood the technical and mechanics behind the keyboard, the more productive and the more comfortable I was going to be for those long coding sessions. So it was really like a function of productivity. And after I built my second board, it literally became a conversational piece. Anytime someone passed me in a cafe or passed my office, if I was working with a team, they like, oh my God, like that sound is really, right? The sound is really pretty. Or, oh my gosh, those colors. And oh my gosh, you type with the tips of your nails, right? And so I'm like, oh, okay, right? This is function. I'm just deving, guys. Like, please leave me alone. I'm an introvert. Like, please don't talk to me, even though I have a colorful keyboard. And then that turned into, can you build one for me? And can you build one for me? And oh my gosh, it's silent. I didn't even know you were here, right? It's you have the silent board today. And it literally organically came from me building a couple boards for my friends. And then finally, as I was doing the podcast, my friend was working at Google at the time. I think this is before Figma came on the podcast, but my friend from Google was on a pod with me, and they were like, Joy, show your board. And I like turned it over, and again, more people are like, I want one right now. So I think some of it has to do with, yes, I put a lot of work into the mechanics of this because I need, like, you touch your keyboard more than you touch anything else. Think about it. You touch your keyboard more than you touch your face, more than you cook, more that you could very well be on your keyboard 35, 38, 50, 60, 70 hours a day. And that experience could suck and you not know it. It could be hurting your productivity by 30 or 40% and you not even know it, right? So I think I love that your friend got into it. I don't have a keyboard wall. One day I will graduate to the keyboard wall.
Impressive.
But that's how it happens. That's how it happens. I
take over my life because she keeps sending me keyboards.
It is the most beautiful gift anyone could give you, because you're going to look at it every day. Maybe not Saturday and Sunday, but you're going to look at it every day and you're going to touch it every day. And it's the gift that keeps on giving.
So when we chatted before, you said something that I thought that had sat with me about why typing on a mechanical keyboard feels different. Talk to me about that.
So if you have long nails, you have a few limitations. If you're typing on like a Mac keyboard or most laptops, they're very small keys and they're slippery. So if you type with the pads of your fingers are going to get stuck between the holes. If you type with the tips of your fingers, they're going to slip inside and you can't move fast enough. Yeah, you can type because you know where the letters are, but you can't move fast enough. You can't really find a flow state. You can't really find productivity, right? Like you're slipping, you're trying to communicate and there's slipping in your communication. So the very first mechanical superpower of all the boards that I make and the boards that I built for myself is either they have a very chalky surface with a lot of friction, so there's no slipping, or they have a bit of a kind of like silicone feeling surface where there's no slipping. So just not having slipping of your fingers as a woman is already superpower. Then you have the mechanics that connects the frame of the board with the actual keycap that you're hitting on. And that comes in thousands of varieties. It's called a switch. And the switch can be linear, which is like a slide, up and down really quickly. It can be tactile, which means that as you get halfway down, it's got a little bump that lets you know, oh, you triggered this key. And that little feeling gives your brain recognition that success, 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 success. So the combination of how reactive and quick your keys hit, coupled with the friction, and then the vanity part is when you can control that switch, you can control the sound. So I can say, oh, the C-suite's going to be at this place that I'm working today, and we don't want them to hear too much talk. So let me take my silent keys in with me, and I know that nobody will even know that I'm there. It'll be completely silent, and I'll just be coding away. On the same token, I can be like, oh my gosh, I have to write this landing page. So I'm going to be home, like, I want the loudest, thockiest sound. And that thocky sound, which is a funny word, it is a funny word, but it is the best expression of the sound, the deep resonant sound that the keyboard makes. So you've got tactile feel, you've got reactivity, and then you've got a hypnotic sound that after a week or so, as a creative dev, whatever, you start slipping into these flow states that you're like, why am I so productive? Why am I so productive? Oh, I know why, right? The thing that I'm touching for 30 or 40 out, right, is faster. It's reacting to me, right? And the more you use it, the smoother it gets because of the lube, right? So there's all these mechanical pieces that go into that experience. But I think the thing that I needed the most was friction. I need my nails to not slip. I need, again, whether I'm using the pads of my fingers or my nails, I need to have a really comfortable, experience with a lot of friction. Where UX, you want no friction. Keyboard, you need some friction. Does that answer it?
Perfectly. You gave me goosebumps. Just like the first time I heard it, I think you did a better job this time. One of the things that I tell my audience, and I don't consider myself like a voice of like doomsday, right? I just say they're not going to need all of us in 2030. They're not going to need all of us in 2035. And as UXers, I know, I tell people, jobs pay you to forget your dream or to sideline your dream. But like people like you come up and bright, shiny stars who said, hey, not only do I have a vision or something that I love and that I'm passionate about, I also have a very special set of skills, and it's the marrying of those skills. So I'll say it this way because I think this is where, at least in my opinion, people get caught up. What gave you the right, or who gave you permission to say, I'm going to take this thing I love, this thing that I know I'm good at, and turn it into a business? Who gave you permission to do that?
It's so funny because I'm always only focused on the work. As most devs are. You obsess over it. You wake up in the morning, whatever problem you're trying to solve is the first thought. And anytime that I've had a leap, it's because someone around me shamed me into doing the thing that may not have been obvious to me. Just like going from full stack dev, web designer into UX was me meeting somebody saying, bro, are you you're short selling yourself? Like, these guys are making $250 an hour. Are you kidding me? Like, right? Same with the keyboards. I built a few keyboards. Like I said, I had named that name. And then I just remember a friend of mine from LA, photographer, says to me, bro, you need to buy the website, right? I'm like, do I just buy joy? Do I just get joy? No, you get clause and code. Okay, right? Then I'm in a live. Someone else says, yo, bro, you need a hat. Like, you need a shirt, or you need something that says clause and right? Okay, let me go embroider a hat, right? A guest on the bro, show your keyboards. She makes pretty keyboards, y'all. So I have been failing upward, babe. I don't have a business plan where it's like, oh, I'm going to be in the retail shops and I'm going to move. No, it has been a very organic experience, and I am just learning as I go, right? I've been building something that gives me a lot of pleasure, increases my productivity, and my desk is really sexy. So every time I walk into the studio, I have this feeling of enthusiasm of like getting productive and working. That's enough for me. The fact that I'm shipping boards out, and these girlies on TikTok, yeah, these girlies don't sleep on TikTok. They do not sleep. They do not sleep. But they love these boards, right? And so hearing their stories is amazing. Amazing. They all have these really unique horror stories about keyboards. Literally, everyone will tell you a horror story about a keyboard. And you're like, okay, I understand. There's a niche. There's a community for me here. And your friend, right, is part of this community that I am just kind of tapping on the window of like, hey, y'all, like, you know, am I doing it the right way? Is like where I'm at right now. And I don't know where, I don't have a plan. Okay. I don't have a plan. But anytime a girlie tells me, hey, does it come in pink? I'm going to make it in pink.
That sounds an awful lot like user customer research to
Ooh,
me.
ooh,
Just a
lots of
little bit.
lots of user stories, lots of user stories, lots of case studies. I don't think right now it's instinct, right? The funniest, most gratifying. I've built a couple really cool boards in the past week, but next to that, the nerdy most gratifying accomplishment was redesigning all the transactional emails. Okay. UX.
Mm-hmm.
Figuring out there were I think there are 80, but likely about 30 different transactional messages exist. Like, here's your coupon code. Thanks for joining. We got your order. It's on the way, right? These are all opportunities for copywriting and re-engaging and introducing what we do, right, to the community. And so I just remember kind of obsessing for about a week and a half, like, all right, what's going to be the vibe of these messages? Everybody's going to get these emails. How do I want them to feel? And that I was geeked about. Had I not had the UX kind of knowledge, that would have been very daunting, just because there's such a huge volume of messages that kind of go between Shopify and the customer. Or even not the customer, right? The subscriber. It might not be a customer yet. It might just be a prospect. But mapping out those journeys, creating workflows within Shopify, Fire, hooking into APIs like Google, Fire, right? So that has been fun. And then now a lot of it is just running itself, right? I'm making iterations on it. But so those are some of the things that kind of spark joy for me, not just building these pretty keyboards.
I love it. What advice would you have? Because again, I'm trying to help inspire people. What advice would you have for those people who, and I see you, I hear you, I know y'all are out there, who are sitting on a dream, sitting on a passion?
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't think we mentioned that. I'm from Brooklyn. So I'm going to give you the real, and then I'm going to give you the hope. Okay. The real is almost all the entrepreneurs I know are serial entrepreneurs. So if you have the desire to create something that doesn't exist, you will fail many, 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 many times. And it's not about anything other than the journey, right? I have helped build a lot of businesses, and I've had a lot of different kind of creative things that I've done over time. You're always also rebranding yourself as you move through your career, right? So that's just part of kind of like living in this world. And you have to be comfortable with failure, which means if you have an idea, the community will tell you if it's a good idea. The community will tell you if it's a great idea, and they will tell you right away. If you have the structure in place, meaning before you put the idea out, if you already have the product ready or the prototype ready, then they may pay with their dollars and vote for the thing that you want to happen. But you have to be okay with putting in 10,000 hours. Maybe the name is wrong. Maybe the URL was wrong. Maybe the logo you spun up wasn't the right thing. Maybe the kerning and the type on the site was not right, and people just could not synthesize what you were saying, right? There's a million reasons why it may not work. And that has to be okay, right? It's okay to cry. It's okay to scream. It's okay to yell. It's okay to vent. And it's okay to fuck up. Totally okay. Keep going. Keep going. So those are my final words. It's like, keep going. Keep trying. Anyone who's successful has failed many times.
Absolutely. Joy, you are delightful. This
Oh my
was
gosh.
everything I hoped it would be. You are amazing. You are very talented. Thank you for
Thank you.
sharing your gifts. Thank you for sharing your journey. I know it will inspire someone. Before I let you go, because I want to be mindful of your time, is there anything else you would want to leave with my audience?
Thank you for having me. You validate, I think you and the community have validated, but you specifically saying, come and talk. You're a UX girly on the low. Come and talk to my community really, really gives me the courage to keep going. So thank you. And as far as takeaways, I'll show you one of these new little boards. This is the ultraviolet. These are the chalky keycaps I talked about. So go to Clause and Code or clausexcode.com and check them out, share them, message me, tell me what you like, what you don't like, what you hate. If you have a keyboard horror story, tell me about it. If you have a shit user story, tell me about it. Talk to me about it. I love those. And that's it. I appreciate you guys.
Thank you so much, Joy. You are amazing. This has
Thank
been
you.
fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Awesome. Bye.